Easter Island, famous for its massive stone statues and breathtaking isolation, has long been considered one of the world's most mysterious archaeological sites. Known locally as Rapa Nui, it's often seen as the final frontier of Polynesian exploration, a place settled by brilliant navigators and left untouched for centuries. But what if that story isn't the whole truth? What if the first people to live on this remote island weren't just Polynesians at all? New evidence from ancient DNA is challenging the traditional timeline and revealing that Rapa Nui's past might include unexpected contact with another continent, long before European ships ever appeared. Before we start, I'm on a road to get 1,000 subscribers as a small channel. If you want to help me, please subscribe. Rapa Nui sits alone in the southeastern Pacific Ocean, over 2,000 kilometers from the nearest inhabited island and more than 3,700 kilometers from South America. Its extreme isolation has made it a focal point for studying human migration, adaptation, and resilience. Traditionally, historians believe that Polynesian voyagers, using celestial navigation, wave reading, and ocean swells, arrived between 800 and 1200 CE, bringing with them plants, animals, language, and stone-carving expertise. Over time, they developed a society that erected nearly 900 moai statues, created unique religious and social systems, and survived on limited resources. The story of Rapa Nui was framed as both a triumph of exploration and a warning of environmental collapse. Because of its remoteness, it was long assumed that the island remained culturally and genetically isolated from the rest of the world until European explorers reached its shores in the early 1700s. But clues kept emerging that hinted something bigger was going on. For decades, archaeologists uncovered artifacts that didn't quite fit the narrative of complete isolation. Among the most curious were sweet potatoes, native to South America, but found across Polynesia, including Rapa Nui, centuries before European contact. The odds of this plant drifting naturally across thousands of kilometers are slim, pointing instead to deliberate transport. Additionally, bottle gourds, also believed to originate from the Americas, have been identified on the island in prehistoric layers. Some linguists noted faint similarities between Polynesian and Andean terms, while tool styles and agricultural patterns sparked speculation about contact with indigenous South American groups. Oral traditions even hinted at long voyages to distant lands, though they were often dismissed as mythology. These anomalies raised a question that science couldn't yet answer. Had ancient Polynesians sailed to South America and returned, or had South Americans somehow reached Rapa Nui? For years, the debate remained open. Then ancient DNA provided a game-changing clue. Recovering ancient DNA from the tropics is notoriously difficult. Rapa Nui's humid climate and acidic volcanic soils degrade genetic material quickly, leaving few traces for scientists to study. But breakthroughs in DNA extraction changed everything. Researchers used a technique called hybridization capture, which acts like a molecular fishing line, targeting and pulling out specific DNA fragments from old skeletal remains. Focusing on the dense bones of the inner ear, known as the petrous part of the skull, they were able to recover partial genomes from 15 individuals who lived between 1670 and 1950. These remains had been held in European museums for decades and were studied in collaboration with Rapa Nui community representatives. Once sequenced, these ancient genomes were compared to global genetic databases. The team expected to find a typical Polynesian signature, but what they found instead was a shock. Hidden among the Pacific ancestry was a subtle but unmistakable trace of another world entirely. The results revealed that ancient Rapa Nui individuals carried roughly 90% Polynesian ancestry, but also about 8 to 10% indigenous American DNA. This wasn't contamination or a recent colonial mix. The genetic signals were consistent across individuals and pointed to a mixture occurring between 1250 and 1430 CE, centuries before the first Europeans ever arrived on Easter Island. The study confirmed that the islanders had contact with Native American populations at some point during their early history. Whether the contact happened on the island itself or during voyages to the South American coast remains unclear, but the DNA left no doubt. Rapa Nui was not as isolated as once believed. This admixture challenges the long-standing assumption that Polynesians lived in total seclusion after settling Rapa Nui. Instead, it points to a dynamic period of ancient exploration, where people from different worlds met, exchanged genes, and left a lasting legacy hidden in the bones of their descendants. The presence of indigenous American DNA in ancient Rapa Nui individuals raises profound questions about prehistoric navigation. One leading theory suggests that Polynesian voyagers, known for their unmatched skill in open ocean sailing, may have reached the South American coast, interacted with local populations, and returned home, bringing not only crops but people. Another possibility, though less likely, is that Native Americans themselves reached Rapa Nui via ocean currents or rudimentary vessels. Either scenario defies the old notion that these oceans were barriers. Instead, they may have been ancient highways. The genetic evidence doesn't show a one-time drift or accident. It shows intentional contact strong enough to leave an imprint in the gene pool. This discovery supports the growing body of evidence that Polynesians were among the greatest seafarers in human history, capable of round trips across the vast Pacific. Far from isolated, Rapa Nui might have been part of a larger maritime network spanning the Americas and Oceania. For years, Rapa Nui was cited as a cautionary tale of ecological self-destruction, a once thriving society that collapsed under the weight of its own ambition. The popular ecocide theory argued that the island's population cut down all its trees to move moai statues, leading to deforestation, food shortages, warfare, and eventual collapse even before Europeans arrived. But the genetic evidence tells a different story. DNA from ancient individuals shows no sign of a sharp population bottleneck or catastrophic die-off during the pre-European period. Instead, the genetic diversity remained relatively stable, indicating that the population was sustained across centuries. The true demographic collapse didn't begin until the 1800s, when European-introduced diseases, slavery, and colonization devastated the Rapa Nui community. The idea of a self-inflicted downfall now appears less supported by genetic data. Rather than being victims of their own environment, the early Rapa Nui people may have successfully adapted until outside forces brought irreversible change. The discovery of indigenous American ancestry in ancient Rapa Nui individuals forces a revision of who we consider the island's original settlers. They weren't simply Polynesians living in total isolation. They were part of a mixed community shaped by long-distance contact. This means the story of Rapa Nui's origins isn't a single migration event, but a layered history of movement, connection, and exchange. The early population may have included individuals or even families from South America, either brought back by Polynesian voyagers or arriving independently. These genetic traces reveal that Rapa Nui's founding community was more diverse than anyone had expected. This genetic discovery has ripple effects far beyond Rapa Nui. It supports a growing re-evaluation of ancient Pacific and American interactions, suggesting that transoceanic voyages were not only possible, but may have been more frequent than once believed. It also reframes Polynesian navigation not just as a series of isolated eastward leaps, but as part of a circular network that may have included return trips and exchanges. These findings encourage new questions about how ideas, crops, and technologies might have flowed across the Pacific. Easter Island, once seen as the edge of the world, now appears to be part of a wider ancient maritime web. This discovery opens the door to a wave of new research possibilities. Scientists hope to analyze older remains from deeper archaeological layers on Rapa Nui to see when exactly American ancestry first appeared. Comparative studies with ancient DNA from coastal South American populations, especially in Peru and Chile, might help identify the precise source. Researchers are also exploring the potential of plant DNA, linguistic evidence, and even underwater archaeology to trace forgotten voyages. Could other islands like Mangareva or the Marquesas also hold signs of American contact? The big picture is just beginning to emerge, and many of Rapa Nui's ancient secrets are still waiting to be uncovered. Easter Island has long stood as a symbol of mystery, endurance, and isolation. But ancient DNA is rewriting that legacy. Its first inhabitants weren't exactly who we thought. They were Polynesians, yes, but also connected genetically and culturally to people from across the sea. Their story is one of navigation, adaptation, and unexpected exchange. It reminds us that ancient humans were far more interconnected than we often imagine. What other stories lie hidden in bone, soil or stone? Let me know in the comments. Like and share if you enjoyed this journey, and don't forget to subscribe and check out the Patreon to support future explorations.